At the outset, I must say that trying to be a supportive family member to someone who's depressed is not something that you're going to get right. And I mean that respectfully, and I think that the term equipoise is probably the most accurate term. Equipoise refers to the imbalance that a tightrope walker has in how they get to the other end. They don't get there by being balanced. They get there by constantly correcting their imbalances. And when you add up all those imbalances, the aggregate is zero. So we've got to be in a position where we're constantly moving ourselves, listening to our intuition, trying to get it not wrong. Families. Carl Whittaker has a lot to say about families. One of the things he starts off by saying is, a healthy family is one in which misery is equally distributed across all members. Unfortunately, every now and then, that misery will get more crystallized with a particular person. And Carl Whittaker goes on to say that it's impossible to talk about individuals. Individuals really are just fragments of family. And what is family? And I think James McBride probably describes family best. He says, to have a family, you've got to have the following ingredients. Little boys with pockets full of string who tease their sisters, little girls who tattletale, distant relatives that come and drink all your booze, fathers who sneak the leftovers, pissed off wives, cigarette-fouled rooms, young chargers leading their granddad off to the urinal, and dogs who insist on crapping on the living room floor. And if you got that, you're normal. But he goes on to say that it's in the mess, in the absurdity, and often the pain of family life in which most of us will find our redemption and find each other. The difficulty, though, is that some of our members end up in a very deep mess, in the pit that Stuart spoke about early this morning. That's so dark, so dark. Some of you will have come across the adventures of Baron Munchausen. He was a 17th century figure who told a lot of tall stories. And one of the stories he tells is how he was riding on his horse one day and he inadvertently rode into a swamp. And as the horse thrashed about in the swamp, it sank quicker and quicker. And as the swamp came higher and higher on him, he became more and more panicked, until just as he was about to go down, he had a brainwave. And he reached up and grabbed his ponytails and pulled himself, and the horse incidentally, out by his ponytails. And we now know that that just gives you a really bad headache. But the temptation is, when we're standing on the outside of the swamp on nice solid ground, to throw all sorts of really useful advice like, snap out of it, it can't be so bad, try harder, pull yourself together. And that really is analogous to saying to the people in the pit, in the swamp, grab your ponytail, pull yourself out. And I think a bit like Graham Lindiger's Job's comforters earlier, what can often happen when we stand on the periphery, tossing out our, what we think is pretty common sense advice, is that we end up very rejected, and the person receiving it ends up guilty and often insulted. And even if we reach our hand out and grab them tight, I swear 9 times out of 10 they will wriggle out your grasp. And again, we're left confounded, absolutely confounded. In some ways, as a family member, because we are part of that depression, we don't want to get into the swamp with our loved one because it's painful for us. We're already struggling with our own guilt, our own confusion.